illegal immigrants.
100,000.
When we're taking people out of the country, you wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
The topic of immigration has been a widely debated topic in America in recent years. This is an issue that people are split on. Some are calling to build walls on our borders and to legislate tougher immigration laws, while others argue that America was created on the backs of immigrants. The stereotyping of immigrants plays a hard role in driving America's anti-immigration rhetoric, which is meant to justify excluding them. In order to understand the validity of criticism held against these immigrants, we need to examine the stereotypes used to critique them. A common stereotype we hear about immigrants is that immigrants refuse to assimilate into American society.
But this was too much change. In fewer than 20 years, the culture their parents and grandparents had built evaporated.
In this clip, former Fox News commentator Tucker Carlson makes the argument that immigrants are coming into America and evaporating American culture. He claims that the major demographic change that comes with mass immigration brings a lot of new culture into communities and replaces American culture. An example he presents is how a lot of people are not speaking English at home after a major increase of immigrants arriving in some cities. He's trying to show that immigrants are not speaking the language that belongs to American culture, so they are not trying to assimilate into American society. Well, is that really true though? Well, contrary to what Carlson claims is happening, immigrants seem to be fusing their culture with American traditions instead of refusing to assimilate into it. The BBC's video, What Does It Mean to Be Mexican American, shows examples of this fusion taking place.
We get to enjoy the best of both worlds, in a sense.
This Sunday we will watch the Super Bowl, but maybe next Sunday we will watch a soccer game.
We completely take in the American culture when it comes to Thanksgiving, but for Christmas, that's designated as, where our ancestors come from.
Yeah, this is what they call tacos dorados. It's ground beef patty folded in a corn tortilla, deep fried.
Would you say it's Mexican American?
This is definitely Mexican American, yes.
This blend of food and traditions demonstrates how immigrants are integrating American practices into their lives, which refutes the idea that they aren't engaging in American culture. Well, the same thing is happening with languages too. As it turns out, these immigrants are able to learn English and be further integrated into American society.
It's like a third culture in the United States.
Switching from Spanish to English in the same sentence.
2 languages, more opportunities.
This also refutes the argument that immigrants are refusing assimilation because it shows that immigrants, like those Mexican Americans, are actively learning and speaking English, like US natives do. Though this doesn't stop Carlson from portraying immigrants inaccurately and poorly. Carlson's proof that immigrants don't want to assimilate for not being able to speak English is unreasonable. In the article, Central Americans assimilate very well, the Cato Institute presents a survey from the US Census showing us that yes, 80% of Central American immigrants aren't able to speak English on their first year in America, but that high percentage of immigrants drops drastically after spending 30 years in America to just 27%. This shows that it takes a lot of time for people to adjust and learn a new language in a new environment. Integrating English into immigrant lives is happening slowly, but Carlson only shows the slow growth out of context, which disregards that assimilation happening. One more common stereotype we hear about immigrants is that they take jobs away from American workers.
Nor is the fact that the inflow of all this cheap immigrant labor hurts Americans who actually will do those jobs that Durbin turns his nose up at.
In this clip, Laura Ingraham, the host of Fox News' The Angle, makes the argument that immigrants are taking jobs away from American workers. Her reasoning is that American workers are willing to work a labor-intensive job for a fair wage. but immigrant workers are getting hired instead because they usually work for lower wages. Her 2 radio college demonstrated how they couldn't find work because they claimed the businesses they went to supposedly preferred immigrant workers. So, is there any truth to this belief that immigrants steal jobs away from Americans? Well, Vice News' Roy Germano shows me that there might not be any. Germano decided to investigate if unemployed people were willing to work jobs like being a dairy farmer. This clip is of Germano at an unemployment office, located a few minutes away from a couple dairy farms.
Are you looking for work right now?
Yeah.
Would you be interested in working on a dairy farm by chance?
For milking or something?
Yeah, milking parlor.
From what time to what time?
2 a.m. to noon.
It's a long shift in the middle of the night.
2 a.m. I don't know if I can do it.
No? Okay. All right. Would you be interested in working on a dairy farm by chance?
No, thank you.
No?
Not right now.
It's not my kind of job.
Yeah, I don't know about the farm, man.
Americans, despite what Laura claims, don't actually want to work these jobs that immigrants are doing. They consider it an unappealing job because it's dirty, time-intensive, and laborious all day in order to stay competitive with other farms. This demonstrates how immigrants are actually doing jobs that most people don't want to do, even though they're in need of a job. This refutes the stereotype that immigrants steal jobs because those jobs were never wanted in the first place, and they wouldn't be taken by anyone else other than those immigrants. I also want to say that it's not the immigrants that are setting their own wages low. It's greedy business owners who want to maximize the profits that set their wages low. So, the exclusion of immigrants because of the stereotype that they get hired more because they get paid less is invalid because they can't control who hires them for what price. Now, resentment of immigrants isn't a new thing. It has been going on for as long as immigrants have been coming to the country. Back in the mid-1850s, Chinese immigrants left China for survival. Millions were killed in the Civil War, and many were starved due to floods of crops. They came to America to find prosperity, to improve their lives of them and their families back in China. But when they came, they were met with resentment. The same stereotypes that people are using to resent immigrants now are exactly what we're using to exclude immigrants back in 150 years ago. American natives were saying that Chinese immigrants were stealing their jobs and refusing to assimilate. These stereotypes were unfair to say, as Chinese immigrants were never given the chance to assimilate into American society. Their culture just seemed too alien to Americans. They could never be alike no matter what they do. So, as a result, they were excluded, separated from parts of American society and culture. It's also unfair to say that Chinese immigrants were stealing jobs because they were doing jobs Americans considered undesirable work. Those jobs were too time-intensive and was exhausting manual labor for American workers. These jobs never would have been worked if not for immigrants doing them. However untrue this widespread belief was, it compelled people to resent and even exclude immigrants by passing legislation such as the Chinese Exclusion Act. That act made it impossible for Chinese immigrants to become citizens, as well as making the process of coming in and leaving the country more difficult. What we should have learned from this is that immigrants usually come into America for survival and a chance to change their lives for the better. We should have learned to look closer at stereotypes to determine the validity of resentment and criticism. If we would have learned this lesson today, we would not be criminalizing and discriminating against immigrants. America should be a free country, a country where immigrants are able to come in without being resented and persecuted. I hope that with the passing of legislation in the future, this vision will come true. Thanks for watching.